What is good, you guys? This is Steven with All Talk On, and today I am finally back with a PC build. I'm sorry I've been busy between life, and I did take about a week to do my little brother's computer between doing the reviews, the overall build, and the editing, and the stress testing, and overclocking, installing stuff, and on top of overall just helping him learn how to use it. I've been quite busy. I had a request for someone to request from someone to make a build using a case. And I feel really bad because I promised him Sunday, Monday, and I've been busy, you guys. You got to remember, I have stuff to do besides YouTube channel. I have a full-time job. I have a house that needs to be cleaned and things that need to be done. But I try to get to things as quick as possible. I always try to keep you updated. If you know, I don't get on it right away, please just hang in there and it will come. Don't worry, homeboy, I did not forget about you. So he wanted me to build a build around the thermaltake Armor A30i micro ATX mini tower case. Now, sorry. As you guys know, I love Pepsi, and I always chug Pepsi for 4 of these, so I'm always burping. Sorry. Anyways, you guys, as we know, this case is awesome looking, very small form factor in general, but it is a $90 case, and I want to get this out there right now. He asked me to do a $400 to $500 budget with this. At $100 going towards your case on a $400 or $500, that's an extreme budget, you guys. You got to understand that. I am going to do it because he asked, and of course I'm going to help him out. If he really wants this case, I'm going to show him things he can put in there to still get some decent performance. I did do 2 builds, so we're going to try and hustle through these as fast as we can. We have a $415.72, and then we also have a $518.71. And if you ask me, the $500 one, I would definitely pay the extra $100 for it. Now, I know people are going to be questioning me on the choices I've made, but I've done research on this case because I really did like this case, and codename Devil's Den, my brother's PC that I had built and purchased and all that, was originally going to be in the thermaltake Armor A30i, but I ended up going with the thermaltake Core V1 because not only was it half the friggin' price, it overall was just more spacious and allowed for more airflow. So everything I chose came down to basically the things that I know about this case, because like I said, I did do some extensive research on it to basically find out if it was something I wanted to build in. Anyway, so we're going to hop right into this. We are going with an APU build for the first budget build at $415. Now imagine how cheap this would be if we didn't have a $100 case, you guys. This thing would be extremely cheap. So the first thing, I went with the AMD A10 7800 APU CPU combo. I mean, it's on the FM2 socket and a 3.5 gigahertz clock speed with 4 cores, and it's an awesome CPU / GPU. I know people are like, why didn't you go with the 7850K? Well, shut the fuck up. You don't know what you're talking about. First off, the 7850K is a little bit more expensive. Second off, the only real purpose you'd really want that is for its unlocked and overclocking ability. In this thermal Armor case, there is not a lot of room for a halfway decent cooler in here. There really isn't. You can't fit much of a cooler in here, and because of that, you are extremely limited on your overclocking. So why pay the extra money for that? Yes, it does perform slightly better, but it also consumes almost twice as much power, which is another reason you'd have to up the power supply. Well, you wouldn't have to up it because I overshot it like I always do, but the performance gain isn't really too much. It would be nice to have, but I wanted to stick to that $400 budget, and that would push me a little bit over if I did choose that CPU. So I did go with the A10 7800 because it's cheaper, it consumes less power, it gives almost the same performance, it runs cooler with the fact that it consumes less power. And as well as it's, a great working processor. Now this does have the integrated graphics, which we will be using for it. As far as gameplay goes, you can play some of the higher end titles, believe it or not. You will have to play some of the titles that are really demanding at 720p if you want to hit medium settings and high settings. And there are a few titles, I think about 2 or 3, that you will have to hit 720p on low settings. So keep that in mind. This is it's very limited as far as its performance, but it definitely will do almost any other game. It'll play Battlefield on medium settings at 1080p, and it'll play it at 720p on high settings. And as far as other less demanding games like me, I love Left 4 Dead 2 and games like that, Minecraft and all that, cool stuff that everyone's addicted to. It will definitely handle those maxed out, no problem at all. But as far as the newer titles out, of course, it's going to have some struggle. There is no dedicated GPU. You can crossfire this with, I think, a 250 or 260X. Dedicated graphics card, which will definitely improve your performance a little bit, as well as activate your mantle in games like Battlefield 4 to get that extra bump. Now for the motherboard, we went with the Asus A78ME. So this is an FM2 Plus socket on the chipset of the AMD A78, and it is by Asus. It supports RAM speeds from 1066 to 2400 megahertz with a max memory of 32 gigabytes. Now this is a micro ATX motherboard because we have a micro ATX case. This does not support Crossfire or SLI. It has 6 SATA 6 ports, and yes, it does have USB 3.0. Basically, it's your standard, decent, working motherboard. It's going to get the job done. It's nothing flashy. It is super cheap, clocking in at $44.99, which is not a bad price. Next, we have the RAM, and of course, with running an APU, you're going to want higher speeds in your RAM, so that way your GPU inside of the CPU can benefit from it. So we have a Vexor RAM. It's 2133 megahertz speed. Honestly, I'd never heard of the brand, but there's ratings, 4.8 average rating. So obviously people are thinking it's good. It does have a higher cast latency of 11, but honestly, if you look at a lot of 2133 RAM, they will have higher cast latencies being clocked up to that type of speed. And it is also at 1.5 volts, you guys. That is very low voltage for 2133 RAM, which most likely means you might be able to push the RAM to 1.57 or 1.6 volts and bump it to 2400 megahertz for that extra boost from your APU. It also has LEDs on the top of it, so it flashes with little, I was told, or from what I've read and stuff, it doesn't flash as hardcore as some of the other annoying RAM lights, but it definitely lets you know it's there, which is an awesome plus because this case does have Windows. Next, for the hard drive, we went with our standard Western Digital 1 terabyte SATA 6, 64 megs of cache, 7200 RPM, 3.5 inch Western Digital Blue 1 terabyte hard drive. Standard hard drive, you guys. Nothing flashy about it. I'm not going to go into it. Next, we have the case, which is what this was built around, is the thermaltake Armor A30i. An awesome looking case. I want to say a few things about this. First off, it is very, very limited in space. In fact, the power supply hovers right over the CPU, limiting your cooling options drastically. The most thing you're really going to be able to fit in there are like low profile Noctua coolers or some like Zalman little fan, the weird spiral Zalman coolers that they have. As well as they do have two 5.25 inch bays, as well as a 3.5 inch bay for I think those are for the micro SD cards and stuff, USB 3.0, and your headphone and microphone input, as well as your LEDs. But from what I've been told about these 5.25 bays is that they do interfere with some certain things that you want to put into the case, mostly the fan in the front. I heard that the second drive bay for the optical drive will interfere with it if you try to put a drive in there. But with this small of a case, I doubt you're really going to be trying to stuff a drive in there, and if you do, you're probably only going to go for one. It does come with 2 fans, I believe, and I believe they're both LED. I think it's a 200 millimeter at the top and an 80 or 90 millimeter in the front, maybe 120. I don't think it's that big though. But this case is clocking in at $99.99 with free shipping from Newegg, with a $20 mail-in rebate and $10 off for a total of $89.99, not counting the rebate because I don't do that. So this is a $100 case, and like I said, I would not suggest this if you are budget building. I'm sorry. The cool things about this case is it supports outrageously long graphics cards. It has case windows, comes with a big fan on the top and a small fan in the front for great ventilation. Shitty parts, very limited on CPU coolers, very horribly limited on cable management. And it's going to be a little hot case in there. It's going to be a hot box for sure, but sacrifices you make for it to look this cool and be this small. Next, we have the power supply. It is just an EVGA 400 watt power supply, no efficiency whatsoever. And if you guys are wondering why I did that, it is because we are at 154 watts total pull. estimated wattage. Now you could literally go and pick up I think they're like Flex ATX power supply, which are super skinny, super small power supplies, and custom mount it somewhere in this case to where it's not hovering over your CPU. Those are very tiny power supplies, and they sell up to about 250 watts to maybe 350. You could be good off a 200 watt power supply. This thing is extremely low wattage, which is once again why I picked it. I picked the EVGA 400 watt just because it was only $26, and this case does support full size power supplies. But if you did want to go with the 7850 and you wanted to be able to put a bigger cooler on it, as well as you want to have a sufficient amount of power, you can definitely go for those smaller power supplies that will basically, you'll have to custom fit it, case mod it to not be above your CPU. But overall, that is the $415 build, and now we're going to hop into our other build that we have, which is a little bit more pricey at $518.71, but the performance out of this one is 10 times better. So first up, we have the AMD FX 6300. I am not looking to overclock in this build due to the fact that I said limited CPU coolers, as well as limited airflow and horrible cable management. We're going to go with this because this is just an all-around good processor for, a beginner to a moderate gamer. This is definitely going to get the job done. It's got 6 cores and a clock speed of 3.5 gigahertz, and I believe it turbos up to 4, and it's on the AM3 Plus socket, which is supported by micro ATX motherboards. And it's a good processor. It is clocking in at a lot higher TDP than our last one at 95 watts. But that's what you pay for those extra cores, and this thing is a beast for under $100. We're looking at $88.99 from ncixus.com. Very cheap processor, very great cheap processor. Honestly, the Pentium G is an awesome processor, it really is, but if you can afford to get this FX 6300 for the extra $10-20, it is definitely a good buy, because this thing can overclock really well. And on top of it being able to overclock, it's got 3 times as many cores, which is definitely going to help if you want to run some programs in the background of your games. As well, honestly, if you take a Pentium G overclocked to 4.5 and put it up in a dual core game that only utilizes 1 or 2 cores, I guess, against an AMD FX 6300 up at 4.5 gigahertz, the Pentium G will whoop its ass. But you put this in a 4-core or 6-core optimized game, it will beat the Pentium G. And honestly, who cares about those single core games? This will still definitely get it done, and it's not worth getting the Pentium G and limiting yourself from those games that you want to play, as well as running an action recorder. As you guys saw in one of my videos, when I was running the recorder in the background during Titanfall, I had to lower the settings, as well as doing it during DayZ. It definitely takes a toll on your CPU usage, and definitely puts some load on it when you're trying to load a game and play a game at high settings or very high settings. Which it can handle on its own, but running an action recorder in the background makes it really tough, which this AMD FX 6300 will have no problem doing. Next, we had the motherboard. We went with the Asus M587A78LM LX Plus. Ridiculously long friggin' name. No one cares. It's a micro ATX case, and it's cheap. That's the only reason I picked it up. I'm not looking for overclocking. This doesn't even have USB 3.0 because I did not want to go over budget at all. And we were already $18 over budget, and I didn't want to cut anything else from performance because it's worth the extra $18. Honestly, suffer with just using USB 2.0 with the adapter for this build. It's well worth it. If not, chip out an extra $10-15. You can get one with the USB 3.0 headers. Usually, I don't like to line the parts up like that, but like I said, with the budgets we were looking at, trying to fit a $100 case into a $400 and $500 budget, it's just something I wouldn't suggest in general. So this thing supports RAM speeds from 1066 to 1866. Now, it's on the AMD 760G chipset, which I have heard is an overclockable chipset. AMD doesn't really limit you to certain motherboards to overclock. But once again, you guys, we also are going to have to keep in mind as far as stability going. But I definitely think you will be able to overclock on this. But like I said, I wouldn't suggest it with this case due to the fact that you are limited on your CPU cooler. Next, we are going into the RAM. We have the Team Vulcan 8GB 2x4 DDR3 1600 memory. Now, I was a little iffy with picking Team Vulcan because I've never never really heard of them. They do have a CAS latency of 9 and 1.5 volts, which is always decent standard RAM. But then I noticed that they had a 4.2 average rating, and more than 10 people have bought them, and so far none of them had an issue with it. So I mean, I'm pretty sure this is decent RAM, decent budget RAM. We're looking at a price of $59.99 with free shipping from Newegg. Oh yeah, the price for the motherboard was $46.99 from Newegg. So once again, that's why I picked it. It was super friggin' cheap. So I mean, not bad prices. And next we have the Western Digital Blue 1TB hard drive again, because it's cheap right now. It's actually one of the cheapest decent hard drives out there, and it only being a few dollars more than a Hitachi drive. Obviously you're going to want Western Digital as well as Seagate too. I would choose Western Digital over Seagate if they were cheaper, but usually Seagate remains cheaper, but for now Western Digital has dropped a few dollars under. We're looking at $56.85 with a $5 mail-in rebate. That makes me so mad. Fuck that. I'm gonna look for a cheaper price real quick. $54.99 with free shipping from Newegg is where I would get it, but I think it says B&H $52.99. Doesn't say anything about shipping, so I'd probably just go through Newegg. So about $55 for this hard drive. Not bad. Now this is where the powerhouse comes in. We are looking at the graphics card. We have an HIS 270, not the 270X, 2 gigabytes of GDDR5, and a core clock of 900 megahertz with a TDP of 150 watts. HIS does make some pretty decent cards. Once again, they're kind of like Power Color and Club 3D. They're underestimated, underrated, and underused, but I bought a Power Color Devil, and that thing performs better than the $50 more expensive version of MSI's Twin Frozer 270X. Believe it or not, it actually blows it out of the water. It's kind of sad that the MSI version costs more just because it's made by MSI. So give these guys a try. I doubt you'll have any issues. $139.99 with free shipping from Newegg. Definitely a decent buy. And we are back to the case again for $89.99, which is a ridiculous price for a cheap or a budget case. Anyways, you guys, we're now into the power supply. We have the EVGA 500 watt 80 plus bronze, obviously with the higher pull from the CPU, a higher pull from the GPU. You want to have a bronze certification as well as a decent amount of overclearance on your power supply in case you want to hook up extra fans, as well as overclock this bad boy and or overclock the graphics card. So sorry, burped a little bit. Overall, we're looking at some really good builds. We're looking at an estimated wattage of 334 watts, which is, like I said, I overshot it, and I always do. So I'll probably make a video on why you should overshoot your power supply in the future. I'll be using my system as a test because I know my system pulls a ridiculous amount of watts, and I'll show you guys. Someday I'll do it, probably an in case you didn't know video this weekend or something. But anyways, you guys, definitely two decent builds for what I was working with. Keep that in mind, what I was working with. I had to use this case because he wanted me to use it, and honestly, I love the case. I really do. Just for this low of a budget, it's really hard to fit in. If you ask my opinion, FX 6300 is the way to go. If you really want an extremely cheap build, drop the thermaltake, put in a $20 case or something like that, get an even cheaper motherboard, and rock that A10, and you'll have gaming performance in a super small form factor. Super performance, believe it or not. It'll perform really well for not having an integrate or for having integrated graphics instead of having a dedicated GPU. Believe it or not, that thing does game like a pro. If you guys want to watch some videos, check them out. They're all over YouTube of people using them. Of course, it's not going to be a 750 Ti. Of course, it's not going to be a 760 or a 290X. It's not going to be anything like that. It won't even cut close to a 270X, but it definitely can handle light gaming. But you know, there's other things you guys can do. You guys can go with the Pentium G, but the Pentium G version of this cost a little bit more than the 400 and a little bit less than the 500. So it was like right in the middle. And the Pentium G is only good if you overclock it. I'm sorry. The Pentium G will only keep up with an i3 if you overclock it. The Pentium G will, you know, only keep up in games in general if you overclock it. Of course, it'll still play them, just nowhere near as good as it can or as it could. So overall, you guys, that's my build for the guy who wanted me to do it. I hope you enjoy it. Hope you guys, you know, do all the good stuff, like and favor and subscribe me and all that good goodness, always use subscribers, trying to get to 50. Maybe when I get to do, 100, I'll do a giveaway if I can. If I have some free money to buy a part for somebody, and I'll pick a random subscriber, or I'll just pick my favorite subscriber. So, you guys better start being nice to me, because if I pick my favorite one, it's obviously going to be whoever is the nicest. Anyways, you guys, this is Steven with All Talk On, and I will catch you guys later.